My husband brought home a child. I treated him as my own son, teaching him poetry, literature, and etiquette. I raised him to be a noble young man skilled in both the arts and martial arts. Later, he rose to the highest ranks of the court. Yet he imprisoned me in a dark dungeon. He crushed my jaw with his hands. My biological mother, schwanger, was killed by you. You, a venomous woman, dare to call yourself my mother? My husband stood by, hands clasped together. Schwanger, rest in peace in heaven. After being tortured to death, I was reborn, facing the child my husband brought back. I still smiled and said, "All right. From now on, he will be my own son." I was reborn, returning to the time when I had been married to Chi Yuen-hwai for 7 years. He brought back a young boy and said to me, "Rua Rua. His parents died on the battlefield, and we have no children. Why don't we adopt him?" In my previous life, I pitied this child who had no one to care for him, so I gladly agreed. But now, upon closer inspection, though he is only 6 years old, his eyebrows and eyes already bear a resemblance to Chi Yuen-hwai. He is not some battlefield orphan, he is clearly the illegitimate child of Chi Yuen-hwai and my maidservant who came with me as part of my dowry. I pretended not to know and bent down to rub his little face. "All right. From now on, he'll be my own son. What's your name, child?" He was still a bit afraid of me and whispered, "Chi Jean." Chi Yuen-hwai explained, "I named him on the way here. Since he'll be raised in our household, I thought he should take the Chi surname." I smiled. Of course. As the sole matriarch of the household, Chi Yuen-hwai had not taken any concubines and was often away at war. So the responsibility of raising and caring for the child fell entirely on me. I recall from my previous life that Chi Yuen-hwai would come to see Chi Jean every few days. Sometimes even speaking to him alone, asking if he had eaten enough, was dressed warmly, and had been mistreated. I assumed he was worried that the servants were mistreating Chi Jean, but I never imagined that Chi Yuen-hwai was actually guarding against me. Yet in this life, he trusts me implicitly. I continue to care for Chi Jean with the utmost devotion, having the finest fabrics made into new clothes for him and hiring a tutor to teach him reading and writing. Chi Yuen-hwai was deeply moved. Perhaps Chi Jin's arrival had made him feel like he had a family again. As night fell, he chatted with me about everyday matters and refused to leave. In the 7 years since our marriage, there had been very few moments of intimacy between us. The last time was over 2 years ago. He suddenly went wild, throwing himself on top of me and roughing me up. I couldn't resist. And the next day I was in so much pain I couldn't get out of bed. What was even more painful than that night was the miscarriage that followed. That was already the second child I had accidentally lost. I felt guilty toward the Chi family, thinking that I had no fate to have children in this lifetime. So I treated Chi Jean-hwai, whom he had brought back, as my own child, loving him with all my heart and soul, wanting to give him the best of everything in the world. But the love I gave him would eventually become the knife that killed me. I would never, ever have any physical contact with Chi Yuen-hwai again. Chi Yuen-hwai's heart was burning with desire. He pressed his chest against mine, his breath hot and heavy. He ran his fingers through my hair, his voice low and hoarse, "Rua Rua. I want." The light was too bright. I pushed him away shyly and took a pair of scissors from the drawer to trim the wick of the candle. Chi Yuen-hwai's gaze fell to the ground, his expression changing drastically. The perfume pouch that fell out of the drawer was something Xiao Shuang had owned before she died. Xiao Shuang was an orphan my mother had rescued from a refugee camp, and later she and Xiao Chui became my maids. Before the wedding, I sternly warned the two of them, "You two have grown up with me. When you find someone you love, tell me, and I will prepare a generous dowry for you, so you can marry with honor. But there is one rule, the groom is my husband. No matter what the other family's customs are. You two must behave properly in my presence and never harbor improper feelings for him. On the night of the wedding, I used a playful tone to make my intentions clear. Husband, Xiao Shuang and Xiao Chui are like my sisters. Don't let their beauty distract you. Qi Yuanhui paused for a moment and laughed. No matter how beautiful other women are, how can they compare to my wife's natural beauty? Not long after, I found Xiao Shuang and Qi Yuanhui in the woodshed. The two of them were naked, their hair scattered, sweating profusely as they rolled around passionately. On Qi Yuanhui's broad, bronze-colored shoulders, Xiao Shuang's hands had left several red marks. I demanded a divorce. Qi Yuanhui pleaded with me, saying he had been drugged by Xiao Shuang, then knelt on the ground, swearing to the heavens that I was the only one in his heart. Though the name of divorce sounded pleasant, outsiders would still blame the woman, and her family would be mocked. Under my parents' persuasion, I endured it. Xiao Shuang was expelled from the mansion, and her name became a taboo word in the household. It also became the name neither I nor Qi Yuanhui would ever mention between us. The perfume pouch she had made earlier had been secretly hidden by Qi Yuanhui. But Qi Jin, out of curiosity, accidentally stumbled upon it. I deliberately placed the pouch in the drawer, never expecting it to come in handy so soon. I picked up the pouch, holding it in my hands and examining it, and whispered, this stitching feels familiar. I think I've seen it somewhere before. I turned to look at Qi Yuanhui. Husband, have you seen this before? Qi Yuanhui rested his hands on his knees, turned his head away, and his face was tense. A woman's belongings? How could I have seen them? I blinked my eyes, looking at him in surprise. He seemed eager to prove his innocence and added, since it's not yours, have someone burn it. All right. I had it burned. The previous ambiguous atmosphere vanished like smoke. He fidgeted restlessly, suddenly stood up, and left with a parting remark. It's late. Go rest early. Before striding away. I watched him leave, my gaze growing fierce. Anyway, he'll be leaving for the front in less than 3 months. Before he left, Qi Yuanhui patted my shoulder and said, Ruah, you're the most virtuous woman in the world. With you taking care of the household in Jinyu, I can rest assured. I smiled gently. You can rest assured. He didn't lecture me like he did in the past. This time, he seemed to truly trust me. Before leaving, he hugged me, then hugged Qi Jin, and mounted his horse, riding off into the distance. I led Qi Jin toward the backyard. According to the events of my previous life, Qi Yuanhui's battle would be arduous, and he wouldn't return for 6 years. During those 6 years, I would be the sole mistress of the Qi mansion, with the Qin family backing me. Doing anything to a 6-year-old child would be as easy as turning over one's hand. Making Qi Jin fall ill or causing an accident, as long as I planned it carefully. No one would suspect me. Even if Qi Yuanhui later grew suspicious of me, he couldn't possibly accuse me, the legitimate wife, of harming his adopted son without any evidence. Qi Jin's chubby little hand suddenly scratched me, tickling me. I looked down and realized he was only 6 years old. He was so small that he only reached my waist, and his tiny hands could be easily wrapped in mine. He opened his pure, crystal-clear eyes and asked me cautiously, Mother, can I skip school today? He called me Mother. I couldn't deny that my heart softened slightly. These chubby little hands would one day grow long and beautiful, with delicate joints. They would lock me in a damp, dark cell, crush my jaw, and stare into my eyes, saying, You, a poisonous woman, dare to call yourself my mother? The autumn wind blew coldly, and I couldn't help but shiver. I let go of Qi Jin's hand and said gently, You don't have to study today. Go play ball. Qi Jin danced with joy and ran off happily. I admired the nail polish on my hands and thought maliciously, I can't be like I was in my previous life. Rising early and staying up late to study with him and turn him into a top scholar. Since the tiger is fierce, I'll cut off its claws first. He likes to play, so let him play to his heart's content. I had someone take him to the market, buy him any toys he wanted, and even had a servant teach him how to fight cocks and crickets. Qi Jin was thoroughly enjoying himself and grew increasingly disinterested in his studies. The tutor came over. Madam, why didn't the young master come to study today? I frowned and had someone bring a tray of silver ingots. Jinyu said your lessons are boring and he refuses to study. He insists I find him a new tutor. All right. Tutor. Please go. No sooner had I finished speaking than a football flew down from the sky and hit the tutor on the forehead. Qi Jin hid in the distance, chuckling. The teacher was so angry that he stormed out. To ensure Qi Jin's education, I had a notice posted throughout the city, offering a generous reward for a new teacher, so that everyone in the capital would know how much I, as the head mistress of the household, cared about my adopted son. In my previous life, I was imprisoned, and Xiao Chui was sold to a brothel. The people in the mansion feared Qi Jin's authority and, though they sympathized with me, dared not approach me. Only a girl named Song Lu secretly brought me food and medicine. Song Lu was the granddaughter of Sun Papa, the head cook. After Sun Papa passed away, Song Lu was young and alone, so I found her a light duty in the mansion. Out of gratitude for my kindness, she went to great lengths to steal the prison keys and help me escape. Unfortunately, she was betrayed, and I couldn't escape. Qi Jin, to intimidate the people in the mansion, beat Song Lu mercilessly in front of me. She was only in her 20s when she died. Thinking of this, I feel deeply guilty. I went to the kitchen and found Sun Laopa. Laopa, do you have a granddaughter named Song Lu? If you don't mind, please let me be her foster mother. I will take care of all her needs, and I will hire the best teacher for her. A girl must receive an education. It's better to invest in someone worthy than to waste time on someone who will never amount to anything. Qi Jin drove away 7 teachers in a row, and her reputation for being stubborn spread, so gradually no one was willing to come teach her anymore. Qi Yuanhui sent a letter home, casually asked about me, and then inquired about Qi Jin's studies. I replied, Jinyu is healthy and intelligent. Everything is fine at home. Please do not worry. I also stewed her favorite braised pork hock for her to eat her fill. Children grow quickly. By the age of 10, he had already grown into a sturdy, chubby young boy, taller and heavier than his peers. The matter of Song Lu being my adopted daughter was kept secret. I would visit her secretly whenever I had the chance. She was graceful and elegant, already exuding the poise of a well-bred young lady. I thought this peaceful life would last another 2 years. But suddenly, I received news that Qi Yuanhui was returning to the capital. Qi Yuanhui seemed to have the ability to foresee the future. In battle, he fought as if guided by a divine force, not only repelling the enemy but also turning the tide of our long defensive campaign. The war that took 6 years to win in my previous life was now over in less than 4 years. The emperor was overjoyed and personally went out to greet him, promoting him to the rank of 3rd-rank general of the north. But in my previous life, Qi Yuanhui had suffered heavy losses in battle, and my father had to intervene to save him from being demoted to a 4th-rank colonel. I never imagined that this lifetime would bring such a twist of fate. Qi Yuanhui was in the palace audience hall, and I brought Qi Jin and dozens of people from the mansion to wait outside the gate in advance. The emperor bestowed a pile of gold, silver, jewels, and 2 beautiful concubines. I had them arranged for. After nearly an hour, Qi Yuanhui still hadn't returned. The general left the palace. Didn't he? Why hasn't he come home yet? A servant who went to inquire returned with the message, Madam, The general said he has urgent matters to attend to. I was puzzled. He had already settled his affairs in the palace. What could be more important than returning home? Even if he didn't care about me, he should at least care about his son. That evening, the emperor hosted a welcome banquet. Qi Yuanhui was supported back by palace eunuchs. Completely drunk, reeking of alcohol. Schwanger, I've wronged you. Now that I've achieved fame and fortune, I can't, he belched. His eyes were cloudy as he looked at me, making as if to rush over. I skillfully dodged him, and Qi Yuanhui couldn't stop himself, colliding with the doorframe and leaning against the wall, vomiting violently. I had someone call for Qi Jin. Jeaner, this is your father. He hasn't seen you in so many years, he must miss you dearly. Go talk to him. Qi Jin looked at me hesitantly, hesitating several times before clearly deciding not to go. I pleaded with him earnestly, you're already 10 years old. You're a big boy now. You must be filial to your father. I picked up a cup of tea and urged him, hurry up. Take it to your father so he can rinse his mouth. After Qi Yuanhui finished spitting, his mind cleared, and he recognized him, seeing his beloved son after so many years. He called out, Genie. Qi Jin looked bitter, took a few steps forward, but when he got close to Qi Yuanhui, he suddenly dropped the teacup. He smells so bad. Qi Jin had been pampered by me since childhood, how could he endure such humiliation? He shouted, covering his nose, and ran out. In fact, I also found the smell repulsive. Meeting Qi Yuanhui's disappointed gaze, I hurriedly said, General, don't take it to heart. The child is still young, I'll go persuade him. I quickly slipped away. I was afraid I couldn't hold back my laughter. After 3 years apart, he finally saw the son he had been longing for day and night. Yet he only received such an evaluation. Qi Yuanhui must be heartbroken. The next morning, I took Qi Jin to pay respects to Qi Yuanhui. Qi Jin hesitated for a while before reluctantly calling out father. To quickly build a bond with him, Qi Yuanhui kept him behind and personally tested his studies. Soon, deafening shouts echoed from the study, causing the trees in the courtyard to tremble 3 times. His handwriting was sloppy, filled with mistakes, and he couldn't even recite the simplest poems. He knew nothing about the Analects of Confucius or the Mencius. How did you teach him to read? Then came Qi Jin's wailing cries. I rushed in, hugging Qi Jin tightly. He's still a child, he can learn. Why are you being so harsh with him? Qi Yuanhui was furious, he's already 10.5 years old. What's so young about that? How can you be a mother? Didn't you say he was very intelligent? Qi Jin was so scared that tears streamed down his face. And he hid behind me, his eyes red and swollen. I had someone take Qi Jin away and explain to Qi Yuanhui with kindness, Genie is indeed intelligent. But he has a lively and active temperament and simply doesn't want to study. He had risen high in his official position, and his temper had grown with it. He scolded me without mercy. Qin sure. You wouldn't dare neglect him just because he's not your biological son, would you? Xiao Chui hurried to defend me, General. Please don't misunderstand the lady. She has posted notices all over the city looking for a tutor for the young master. The young master has gone through 7 tutors, but he still refuses to study. The lady has broken her heart over this. If the general doesn't believe me, ask the servants in the mansion, and they will confirm what I say. Qi Yuanhui's expression finally eased a bit. I took out a handkerchief, wiped my nose roughly, and rushed out the door, covering my face. Later, Xiao Chui went out of her way to approach Qi Jin and embellished the story, telling him how much I had suffered in front of Qi Yuanhui to defend him. In my previous life, they were a corrupt father and son who deceived and hurt me. This lifetime, my first step is to drive a wedge between them, making Qi Jin hate his father to the core. That night, Chi Yuanhui knocked on my door. Rua Rua. What happened today was a misunderstanding on my part. I squeezed my arm tightly and cried through the door, since you're always on guard against me. Let's just divorce. It'll save you from treating me like a heartless woman. Of course. I wanted to divorce him. But we had been married for years. And I had worked hard to manage the household while he was away at war. If he divorced me now, people would gossip about him. He knew how to weigh the pros and cons and act in his own best interest. He would never divorce me now. Seeing that I had no intention of opening the door, Chi Yuanhui said a few half-hearted words and left. 2 concubines stayed in his room. There were no military campaigns at the border for the time being, so Chi Yuanhui decided to personally teach Qi Jin to read. Unfortunately, Qi Jin had already passed the optimal age for early education. He was accustomed to a life of leisure and indulgence, and whenever he saw a book, he either dozed off or drifted off into daydreams. Chi Yuanhui was so enraged that he kicked the desk and tore the books to shreds. He ordered someone to bring a willow switch and beat Qi Jin's back mercilessly, forbidding anyone to intercede. You have the potential to become a top scholar. Yet you are so unambitious in this life. These were the words that slipped out of Chi Yuanhui's mouth in a fit of anger. At that moment, I became vigilant. Given Qi Jin's lack of education and moral character, no one would ever associate him with the title of top scholar. Why did he dare say that Qi Jin had the potential to become a top scholar? He even said in this life. In his previous life, under my careful cultivation, Qi Jin did indeed become the top scholar. He was clever and cunning, skilled in manipulation, and used the connections of the Chen and Qi families to climb the ranks, eventually reaching the pinnacle of power. In this life, he would only be good at fighting crickets, crawling through dog holes, and crying for his mother. He probably wouldn't even qualify to take the imperial exams. I also thought of other odd things. Why is Chi Yuanhui so confident in letting me raise Qi Jin? In his previous life, Chi Yuanhui was incompetent in battle. Yet in this life, he is invincible on the battlefield. There is only one explanation: he has also been reborn. With his previous life's battlefield experience, he knows his enemies and can prevent potential threats, which is why he was able to complete 6 years of battles in just 4 years. He even dares to think that I can cultivate his son into a top scholar. Once he finds out about my reincarnation and suspects I intend to seek revenge, the first thing he'll do is eliminate me. Chi Yuanhui has achieved great military glory, gained the emperor's favor, commands an army of 200,000 troops, and his power and prestige are as unstoppable as a raging fire. More and more people are climbing the ranks by flattering him. He no longer had to kowtow to others like he did in his previous life. He walked with his head held high, his posture straight, and his demeanor had changed completely. Qi Jingguang lay on the bed, half naked, wailing in pain. He came back and beat me nearly to death. Why did he come back? He should have stayed on the battlefield and never returned home. I'd rather not have this father. Shoo! I quickly made a shushing gesture. Don't let your father hear you. He's a general who kills without mercy on the battlefield. If you anger him, he'll kill you. Qi Jin reluctantly closed his mouth. I applied medicine to his wounds, feigning concern. Even if he's not your biological son, you shouldn't beat him so harshly. Qi Jin didn't know he was his biological son. Qi Yuanhui, feeling guilty, dared not speak openly, which gave me the perfect opportunity to sow discord. Qi Jin's gaze was icy, filled with obvious hatred. That was his true nature. He remembered grudges but not kindness. Mother, even though I'm not your biological son, I treat you like my own mother. If father beats me again, you must save me. I said. All right. We'll stick together. While Qi Jin and I were exchanging tender glances, Qi Yuanhui was indulging in debauchery. The two concubines sent by the emperor, one named Luo Hua and the other named Wei Yu, were attending to Qi Yuanhui with utmost devotion. The two even made a bet on who would conceive first. Qi Yuanhui enjoyed having the beauties by his side at first, but soon grew tired of them. He confronted me. I spend every night in their rooms. Don't you feel jealous? They were given to me by the emperor. How dare I feel jealous? Besides, having more people to serve the general is a good thing. As the legitimate wife, I should be generous and forgiving. He furrowed his brows in displeasure, adopting a condescending tone, and finally asked the question he had been holding back for years. If that's the case, why did you drive away Schwanger back then? In my previous life, Qi Yuanhui never spoke to me in such a tone. Now that he holds a high position and has power, he dares to question me like this. But he still twists the truth as always. I didn't chase Xiao Shuang away. After Qi Yuanhui and Xiao Shuang ran away to the woodshed, I asked him to choose between them, and he asked Xiao Shuang to leave the Qi residence and swore that they would never see each other again. I always thought that he and Xiao Shuang had really broken up. It wasn't until I was locked in the dungeon that Qi Yuanhui told me the truth. After Xiao Shuang left, she discovered she was pregnant. Qi Yuanhui bought a courtyard and secretly arranged for someone to take care of her. When the child was 3 years old, bandits broke into Xiao Shuang's courtyard. Xiao Shuang was killed by the bandits while protecting the child. Qi Yuanhui was heartbroken. When the child was 6, Qi Yuanhui felt he couldn't let the child continue living in such a miserable state and wanted to give him a proper upbringing. So he fabricated a lie, brought Qi Jin back to the mansion, and claimed he was the son of a fellow soldier. He made me raise a thankless child with my own hands. After Qi Jin passed the imperial examinations, Qi Yuanhui transformed into the image of a patient and loving father, embellishing the truth and brainwashing Qi Jin. He said that he and Xiao Shuang had truly loved each other, but I had stolen her away with the help of my family's power, bullying the lowly Xiao Shuang in every way. He said that if Xiao Shuang hadn't been driven out by me, she wouldn't have suffered so much. She wouldn't have died tragically at the hands of bandits, dying with hatred in her heart. Xiao Shuang's death was all my fault. If it weren't for me, the three of them would have lived happily together. Qi Jin wouldn't have been orphaned at a young age, and he wouldn't have come to regard his stepmother as his mother. I raised Qi Jin as my own son because I couldn't have children of my own. I forced him to study and enter the civil service to gain power and status. How ironic that on the day he achieved fame and fortune, he came to hate me with every fiber of his being. He used a dagger to cut my flesh as an offering to his biological mother's spirit in heaven. Qi Yuanhui actually brought up Xiao Shuang on his own this time. I forced myself to suppress my nausea and said, I used to care too much about you, afraid that another woman would take you away from me. But after all these years, I've gradually come to understand that loving someone means thinking of their best interests. As the legitimate wife, I shouldn't be selfish and jealous. Qi Yuanhui nodded approvingly and patted my shoulder. You've come to understand these things. That's good. I will send someone to bring Xiao Shuang back to the mansion tomorrow. What? I stared in disbelief. Isn't Xiao Shuang dead? I almost blurted out. Wasn't she killed by bandits when Qi Jin was only 3 years old? Is Qi Yuanhui deceiving me? To avoid giving away my true feelings, I forced my shock into jealousy. How could you break your promise? Have you been hiding this from me all this time? I clutched my chest. Overcome with sorrow, I never thought that after all these years, you still couldn't forget her. You can keep her body, but you can't keep her heart. Since you can't let go, let her come back to the mansion. I'll see for myself if Xiao Shuang is really still alive. Qi Yuanhui, having received my permission, finally saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes and began to treat me with kindness. Ruah, you're becoming more and more sensible. I'll stay here tonight. He said this while spreading his arms, as if offering me a great favor. I used the excuse of having caught a cold to send him away. Dirty man. I won't touch you. When Xiao Shuang appeared before me, I finally dared to believe she was truly still alive. On the day Qi Yuanhui returned victorious, he did not return to the mansion promptly but instead went to visit Xiao Shuang in secret. Xiao Shuang wore a plain dress, her face lightly powdered, her waist slender and delicate. When she performed the kneeling and bowing ceremony, she seemed as though she might be blown over by the wind. Xiao Shuang pays her respects to the lady. Luo Hua and Wei Yu sat below, each rolling their eyes. Xiao Sui stood behind me, muttering under her breath. Shameful. Only I smiled gently and helped her up myself. You've served me since you were a child. Why are you bowing so deeply? It's all my fault for being so arrogant back then. I had just gotten married and saw you and the general hiding in the woodshed, naked, with the general's bright red underwear hanging on the firewood. I deliberately described the details in a very sensual way, then abruptly stopped talking, leaving room for others to imagine. Luo Hua and Wei Yu covered their mouths and giggled. Never mind. I looked at Xiao Shuang with a sincere expression. All these years, you don't hold a grudge against me, do you? Xiao Shuang pressed her lips tightly together. Shuanger dares not resent the lady. That's good. I sat back down in my seat and said solemnly, you were saved from the refugee camp by my mother. You were once my maid. But from now on, you will be my official concubine. Luo Hua and Wei Yu were chosen by the emperor for the general. And even I must give them respect. You must get along well with them in the future. I was subtly accusing Xiao Shuang of ingratitude, intentionally elevating the status of the two concubines to intimidate her. At the time, I couldn't understand why Xiao Shuang's fate had changed so drastically from her previous life. Later, I suddenly realized. The problem must lie with Qi Yuanhui. Qi Yuanhui had been reborn, but he had been reborn before me, with the lessons of his previous life. He would not let the woman he loved die at the hands of bandits. Therefore, he was able to prevent the tragedy from happening and rescue Xiao Shuang in time. Qi Yuanhui treated Xiao Shuang like a precious treasure, letting her live in the picturesque Shuanghua garden and staying with her every night. At midnight, one could hear intriguing sounds coming from inside. Luo Hua Weiyu despised Xiao Shuang and often joined in with me, berating her with great enthusiasm. When we sisters were once lodged by the general, we would still pay our respects to the lady on time in the morning. Now it's this late, and she hasn't come yet? Better she doesn't come. I can't stand her crying and whining. Who is she trying to pity every day? Of course, it's for the general to see. She's the general's favorite. If she sheds a few tears, he'll comfort her for hours. I see how arrogant she is, always arriving late for her morning greetings. She clearly doesn't respect the lady. I leaned to the side, resting my chin on my hand, deep in thought. Having managed the Qi mansion for years, my spies are everywhere in the mansion. Since Xiao Shuang entered the mansion, she has taken every opportunity to get close to Qi Jin, bringing him food, finding ways to talk to him, and sometimes hiding to watch him secretly, looking as if she had something to say but couldn't bring herself to speak. It must be that Qi Yuanhui has privately warned her that the time for mother and son to reunite has not yet come. Qi Yuanhui is busy with official duties most of the time, except when he is with Xiao Shuang. He lived a miserable life in his previous life, even relying on his son to seek revenge on me. Now that he has the chance to change his fate, how could he let it slip away? The struggle between the Crown Prince and the Prince of Yu is intense. In the previous life, the Prince of Yu emerged victorious. Qi Yuanhui, in order to align himself with the future emperor, firmly sided with the Prince of Yu, declaring his loyalty, forming factions for him, and even trafficking arms on his behalf. I watched all this silently, finding it amusing. The emperor's health is still good, and he has 7 years left before his death. The situation is still uncertain. And the timing is not right. Acting too soon may not be a good idea. That day, Xiao Shuang went over and happened to see Qi Jin lose a cricket fight. Qi Jin blamed Xiao Shuang and took his anger out on her. Who cares about your things? You annoying woman. Get out of here. Don't let me see you again. That night, Qi Yuanhui went to Shuanghua Garden, and Xiao Shuang cried all night. You told me that the lady would raise Jinyu well. Look at him now, he's good for nothing. How do you explain this to me? Speak up. We've been separated for so many years. And now he doesn't even recognize me. Why is my life so bitter? I listened calmly and slipped 10 taels of silver to the servant who came to deliver the message. The next day, Qi Yuanhui sent me a large amount of silk and brocade. All of it was palace-grade fabric. Priceless. You should have it made into clothes, they'll look beautiful on you. I glanced at them, the colors are outdated. Send them to the Qin family for my mother. All right. Everything is fine. Qi Yuanhui, rarely speaking so humbly, said, your health has always been poor, and Qi Jin has grown up. Raising him is a burden. Why not have him adopted into Shuanger's household? When was my health ever poor? Oh, last time Qi Yuanhui wanted to stay overnight. I used the excuse of catching a cold, and he said my health was poor. He persuaded me, you are the matriarch of the household. No matter where the child is raised, you will always be his nominal mother. If you miss Jinyu, you can visit him anytime. What do you think? I really didn't care. But I pretended to be reluctant and made Qi Yuanhui transfer half of the estate's fields and estates into my name before I could bear to part with him. Qi Jin had been hanging out with a bunch of playboys outside. When he heard the news, he flew into a rage. He stormed in to confront me. Mother, why don't you want me anymore? I skillfully pulled out a handkerchief and started crying. I learned this trick from Xiao Shuang. Luo Hua tried to comfort him, young master. How could the lady abandon you? The general has given his orders, she has no choice. Wei Yu sighed, yes. The lady has raised you with so much hardship, she must be more heartbroken than anyone else. I had thought that Qi Jin had some dependence on me and wouldn't want to leave me. But his next words left me utterly heartbroken. My brother already told me that only my mother raised me. So I am the legitimate son. If I'm adopted into the concubine's household, I'll become a bastard. And they'll look down on me in the future. Luo Hua and Wei Yu exchanged glances and shook their heads silently. I dabbed at the corner of my eye with the handkerchief. It doesn't matter. Your father doesn't like me. Maybe he'll make Aunt Xiao the main wife someday. That's different. Qi Jin shouted. Mother is a noble lady of high birth. What kind of lowly servant is Shuang Ai? She's fit to be a slave or a concubine. How dare she be my mother? These words were overheard by Xiao Shuang, who had just entered the room. She had heard that Qi Jin had returned and had come eagerly to fetch her son, only to be met with such harsh words. She stood there dumbfounded. I quickly cleared my throat. Jin, how can you speak like that? Apologize to Aunt Shuang. Qi Jin sneered, walked up to Xiao Shuang, and spat in her face. Pa. He shrugged his shoulders, strolled away with a smug expression, and left with his head held high. Luo Hua and Wei Yu were speechless. I was also stunned. In my entire life, I had never paid much attention to Qi Jin. I hadn't taught him to read or write, nor had I taught him proper manners. An ignorant person, unable to hide his true nature, would inevitably expose his inner evil prematurely. Seeing Xiao Shuang receive her just deserts, I felt a sense of satisfaction. However, Qi Jin's despicable behavior also disgusted me. When Qi Yuanhui heard about this, he flew into a rage, ordered someone to hang Qi Jin up, and had him whipped mercilessly with a whip. Qi Jin cried and screamed. Xiao Shuang followed suit, kneeling down and begging Qi Yuanhui to stop. I had no choice but to act along and plead for mercy on Qi Jin's behalf. The two sisters hid in the distance, watching the spectacle in secret. However, this beating not only failed to have any educational effect but would only make Qi Jin hate him and Xiao Shuang even more. Qi Yuanhui was so angry that his face turned red. He pointed at him angrily. "You're past the age of enlightenment. There's no point in studying anymore. Starting tomorrow, you will train in martial arts with me." Qi Jin had been spoiled by me, indulging in food and drink without restraint. His body was much fatter than that of children his age, and he was simply not suited for martial arts training. He could only perform a few movements before breaking out in a sweat. Forced to hold the horse stance for 3 hours, his entire body felt like it was about to collapse. The next day, before the rooster crowed, he was dragged out of bed by his ears by Qi Yuanhui. I suppose it was because I had raised Qi Jin too well in my previous life, leading Qi Yuanhui to have unrealistic expectations, determined to make him successful and bring honor to the family. However, Qi Yuanhui was used to being strict and decisive in the military, and had no idea how to raise a child. He lacked both the methods and the patience, and was always in a hurry to see results, often resorting to punishment. After days of relentless pressure, Qi Jin finally snapped. Taking advantage of a moment when Qi Yuanhui wasn't paying attention, he suddenly grabbed a sword and lunged at him. Qi Yuanhui's back was bleeding profusely as he stared in disbelief at the child he had poured his heart and soul into. Qi Jin was held down by others, gasping for breath, and screamed hysterically. "I said I don't want to train. I don't want to train. Why are you forcing me? If you want to kill me, just say so. Anyway, you adopted me. If you don't like me, just have someone kill me." Qi Yuanhui clenched his teeth in anger, wanting to stab Qi Jin with the sword. Xiao Shuang heard the commotion and rushed over, covering Qi Jin's mouth. "Stop talking. Are you trying to drive your father to his grave? Qi Lang, Jiner is just a child. Don't take it to heart." Qi Yuanhui was physically and emotionally exhausted, but what hurt him even more was that Xiao Shuang didn't immediately check on his injuries. Instead, she was worried about what he might do to Qi Jin. Qi Jin didn't appreciate Xiao Shuang's concern. He pushed her away and attacked her with all his strength, punching and kicking her. "It's all your fault. You wicked woman. Go die." I was nearby at Shuanghua Garden and witnessed the entire incident. I waited until they had calmed down before pretending to rush over. Oh my! What happened? Qi Jin's stab wasn't deep, so Qi Yuanhui isn't in any immediate danger. But he'll have difficulty moving. In the summer, wounds can easily become infected, so he needs proper care. The imperial physician examined him and then checked on Xiao Shuang, prescribing some medication for external injuries. I stopped the physician. "Please take a look at Jinyu again." Qi Yuanhui had enforced family discipline on Qi Jin, beating his buttocks until the skin was torn and bleeding, a sight too gruesome to behold. The three of them were injured in a way that seemed almost united. Qi Yuanhui dismissed everyone else, leaving only me behind. "Come here." I walked over, and Qi Yuanhui suddenly reached out, grabbing my throat with a fierce gaze. "Qin Shi, have you also been reborn? You've raised Jinyu into this, and I should have suspected you long ago. All of this is your scheme, causing our father and son to turn against each other. Are you proud of yourself? I cannot admit it. Before delivering the fatal blow to an enemy, one must not give them any chance to prepare." He was merely speculating without any evidence. "I bet he dares not kill me." Qi Yuanhui's strength was immense, as if he intended to choke me to death. I could not even form a complete sentence. My feet gradually left the ground, and I was about to suffocate. A young girl's voice came from outside. "Please let me in. This is the medicine the lady personally prepared for the general. She said it must be drunk while hot for it to be effective." Upon hearing this, Qi Yuanhui looked dazed for a moment before finally letting go. I leaned on the ground and coughed violently for a while before regaining enough strength to get angry. Qi Yuanhui, what nonsense are you talking about? Are you crazy? I came here with good intentions to see you. And you're acting like this. Seeing my reaction, Qi Yuanhui muttered to himself, is it because of me? The variable, that everything else has changed? After convincing himself, he took a deep breath and softened his expression. Ruah. I'm sorry. I was possessed just now. Don't blame me. I held back my tears and pushed him away. Qi Yuanhui had just touched me, and the wound on his back tore open, soaking his clothes with blood. He called the people outside in, and a young girl bowed her head and presented the medicine. Qi Yuanhui asked, "Did you say this medicine was personally prepared by the lady for me?" "Yes. This medicine needs to be simmered for 2 hours. The lady got up before dawn and specifically instructed me that the medicine must not be allowed to cool, as it would affect its efficacy." The young girl answered timidly before retreating. She did not raise her head once throughout the entire exchange. Qi Yuanhui's expression softened. Ruah. I misunderstood you. After being treated like this, how could I possibly endure it? I stormed back to the courtyard, packed some things, and took Xiao Chui back to my mother's house. I had been wanting to go home for a long time. All the things I had gone to such great lengths to collect should finally be put to use. Moreover, Qi Yuanhui had already begun to suspect me, and staying at the Qi mansion was a potential danger. With the support of Prince Yu, Qi Yuanhui was thriving in the imperial court, and his boldness was growing. If he had wanted to kill me just now, it wouldn't have been impossible. Afterward, all I need to do is fabricate evidence and come up with a story. The Ministry of Justice has people loyal to Prince Yu, and Prince Yu has the means to cover it up. Even if my parents suspect something, they can't go against him. Thank goodness Songlu appeared in time. I didn't personally brew the medicine for Qi Yuanhui, and I didn't get up before dawn for him. Songlu is not only loyal and kind-hearted but also extremely intelligent and quick-witted. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to steal the key in her previous life. And she almost succeeded. I told her to stay away from Qi Yuanhui and not reveal that I was her adoptive daughter, and she did everything I asked. After I returned home, I told my parents about Qi Yuanhui's recent actions. My father was furious at first, but later he felt deeply uneasy. One quiet night, I disguised myself and was taken by my father to the palace to meet the emperor in person. Qi Yuanhui sent someone to invite me back. My parents scolded him for lacking sincerity. I put on an air of indifference for several days until he came personally, and then I reluctantly returned. Due to the matter involving Qi Jin, Qi Yuanhui and Xiao Shuang had a falling out and frequently argued. On the other hand, Luo Hua and Wei Yu selflessly served Qi Yuanhui with medicine, which deeply moved him. During my absence, Qi Yuanhui took turns staying in their rooms. That night, Qi Yuanhui came to my room again. Ruah. You seem so distant toward me now. Huh? You used to call me husband, but after I returned from the battlefield, you've been calling me general. He lowered his eyes to look at me, his gaze filled with unspoken emotions. Oh, really? I replied casually. It's just a name. It's important. Qi Yuanhui suddenly leaned in and took my hands. I still prefer hearing you call me husband. What's wrong with him again? I pulled my hands away and looked at him speechlessly. Ruo. I used to think you were arrogant and selfish, but now you've become more generous, and I'm not used to it. You personally brewed the medicine for me. You still care about me, don't you? I ate too much dinner, and now I feel a bit queasy. I glanced toward the door. Why are they taking so long? Finally, Xiao Shuang's personal maid arrived. General, Aunt Shuang hasn't been able to sleep or eat properly these past few days. Please go check on her. Every night. The candles in Xiao Shuang's room have been lit. And she's been waiting for you. Qi Yuanhui hesitated for a moment before leaving. The next day, Xiao Shuang arrived late for her morning greetings, looking as if she couldn't be more pampered. In private, Luo Hua spoke up for me, spitting out, "What kind of woman is she? Does she think the general is all hers? Competing with us for his favor is one thing, but now she's even competing with the lady?" Wei Yu said, "We sisters have no intention of competing with the lady for favor. We've been serving the general these days, hoping to conceive so that we may have a future." Luo Hua sighed. "Destiny is not in our hands. We know the general is unreliable, we can only pin our hopes on the children. Men and children aren't necessarily reliable either," I said with a bitter smile. "Only oneself can be relied upon." Taking the opportunity, I recounted my 2 miscarriages. Wei Yu asked in surprise. The lady was pregnant, and the doctor said everything was fine at first. Why did she miscarry so soon? I replied. The general had someone bring me pregnancy-preserving medicine every day. It tasted sour and bitter, but I drank bowl after bowl, and it didn't work. It must be that our descendants lack blessings. My body is no longer suitable for childbearing. The 2 listened silently and exchanged a meaningful glance. They were from the palace, I only needed to hint at such methods, and they would understand. They kept their eyes open and soon discovered something suspicious in the herbal medicine given to them by Qi Yuanhui. Drinking that medicine would make it impossible to conceive. If taken long-term, it would also harm the body. Luo Hua sighed bitterly. If he doesn't want me to have children, he should just leave me alone. Why hurt me? Wei Yu was so angry she trembled all over. I had someone secretly investigate. The medicine given to Shuang Ai is fine. It seems the general only wants Shuang Ai to bear his children. Spit. Lust has clouded his judgment, and he can't control himself. Yet he pretends to be deeply in love with Shuang Ai. How disgusting. Something's off. Wei Yu's eyes darted around. The general doesn't want us to have children. Yet he favors Shuang Ai. Why does he place such high hopes on the adopted Qi Jin? I was about to say something when Xiao Chui rushed over and whispered in my ear. Something's wrong. Song Lu has been arrested by the general. When I rushed to the front hall, Qi Yuanhui was sitting majestically on a pearwood chair. Song Lu was bound tightly, with something stuffed in her mouth, shaking her head at me. She didn't say anything, but I knew. Qi Yuanhui slammed the teacup down and sneered. You're just in time, madam. It seems your spies are everywhere in this mansion. I sat down on the chair beside him and cleared my throat. As the head mistress of this household, I oversee all matters within the mansion. It is only proper for the servants to report to me when something happens. I then demanded, what crime did she commit? Why was she arrested? Qi Yuanhui sneered and pressed further. Song Luo comes from a lowly background and has been relying on Sun Laopa for survival. Why does she have no shortage of food, clothing, or shelter, and even afford a tutor? I investigated privately and discovered that the lady had been secretly using her dowry to support them. I'm curious, there are so many unfortunate people in the world. Why does the lady show such special favor to her? The young maid who appeared in time to bring me medicine that day was Song Lu. Wasn't she? I didn't respond, staring intently at him, waiting for him to continue. Actually, what first aroused my suspicion wasn't Song Lu. Qi Yuanhui folded his arms behind his back. I was looking for a capable person, so I thought of a Jian. But 3 years ago, you found some excuse to drive him out of the mansion. He leaned down and looked at me, asking, Madam, why did you drive him away? What did he do to you? Yes. He offended me. In my previous life, Jian betrayed me, which is why I couldn't escape. I met Qi Yuanhui's gaze without fear and softly said, A traitor who sells out his master for glory, this lifetime. I didn't take his life, which is already lenient. Ha 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 ha. Qi Yuanhui straightened his body and laughed heartily. Madam, you've finally admitted it. You've been reborn too. He laughed madly, his gaze growing increasingly ruthless. After acting this charade with me for so long, you must have a grand plan, right? I calmly adjusted my sleeves and said indifferently, not much. You've seen through everything. I'm disappointed. Qi Yuanhui waved his hand, signaling for someone to take Song Luo away. But he was more nervous than I was. The wall in the study has been altered. There's a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf. The letters I placed on the bookshelf can be taken out from the compartment and returned silently. The red-brown horse I often ride when I go out, I only noticed today that there's a hole in the saddlebag. And it contains a powder that glows in the dark. You sent someone to follow me. Qin Shi. How many of my secrets do you know? He leaned forward, gripping my shoulders tightly, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Speak! Who else did you tell? Your father? The crown prince? No. How could a woman like you have access to the crown prince? I smiled brightly, deliberately provoking him. Who do you think I would tell? Guess. I made thousands of copies of your evidence and scattered them all over the capital. Qi Yuanhui was overcome by anger, suddenly coughing up a mouthful of blood and collapsing on the ground in convulsions. I wrinkled my brows in disgust. The newly tailored clothes are dirty again. There was poison in Qi Yuanhui's tea. The culprit was quickly identified. Qi Jin looked at Qi Yuanhui, who was covered in needles, with an expression of indifference. Luo Ai and Wei Ai told me that you only want to have children with Shuang Ai. Once you have your own biological child, you'll definitely abandon me. As long as you're dead, there won't be any other children, and the general's mansion will be mine. Qi Yuanhui couldn't make any big movements, his eyes bulging with anger, his voice trembling. You ungrateful son. I'll cut you to pieces. Xiao Shuang suddenly appeared from nowhere, clinging tightly to Qi Jin and sobbing. Genie, you're my biological son. He's your biological father. I'm your biological mother. You're our biological flesh and blood. Don't let that woman deceive you. Qi Jin couldn't accept the reality, pushing her away forcefully. Get out of here. I'm not your child. Everyone calls you a whore. Qi Jin looked at me with hopeful eyes. Mother, tell him I'm your son. I shrugged indifferently, waved my hand, and had someone take him away. The general was in no condition to attend court. Send someone to the palace to request leave for him, and tell them the truth. Xiao Cui obeyed. Yes. The general was poisoned by his illegitimate son and cannot get out of bed. Qi Yuanhui, weak and breathless, pointed in the direction Xiao Cui had left. Don't what? Afraid others will find out you have an illegitimate son? Or afraid Qi Jin's future will be ruined? I leaned down and patted his face, continuing to stab him in the heart. You treated him like your own son, but he never regarded you as his father. The pain of being hurt by the one you love most, this is finally your turn to endure it. Qi Yuanhui's neck veins bulged. You poisonous woman. This poison was originally prepared by Qi Yuanhui to force a confession from me. It wasn't meant to be fatal. After ingesting it, one's limbs would go numb, rendering them unable to move, like fish on a cutting board, at the mercy of others. Fortunately, I noticed in time and swapped it out, cleverly placing the real poison in Qi Jin's hands. Xiao Shuang is locked in the frost flower garden, and no one is allowed to visit her. Qi Jin witnessed my ruthless methods and was terrified. He knelt down and begged me. Mother, you are my mother for life. Don't abandon me. I kicked his shoulder with my embroidered shoe. Fine. As long as you carve a piece of flesh from your father's body every day. I won't kill you. Killing is against the law. How could I possibly kill someone? Qi Jin believed me and did as I said every day. Through the door, I could hear Qi Yuanhuai's pitiful screams, as piercing as the wails of a wronged spirit. I never imagined I would become so heartless and ruthless. But this is all from my previous life, what they did to me. Qi Jin locked me in the dungeon, forcing someone to cut a piece of flesh from my body every day. I didn't have to do anything else. Yet it was enough to make me wish I were dead. Court officials came to visit, but I turned them all away. It won't be long now. 5 days later, the Imperial Guards kicked open the gates of the Qi mansion, and flames lit up the night sky. Qi Yuanhuai had colluded with the Prince of Yu and hoarded military supplies. The evidence was irrefutable. He lay paralyzed on the bed, still spitting out curses as he was dragged away by 2 Imperial Guards. Qin Shi, this is a crime deserving of extermination of 9 generations. I may die, but you won't escape either. The leader of the Imperial Guards approached me and said, "You played a crucial role in obtaining the evidence against General Qi so quickly. Treason is a capital offense punishable by the extermination of 9 generations. But the Emperor is just and merciful. He has granted you a divorce, and you are no longer part of the Qi clan." I was overwhelmed with gratitude and joy. It wasn't him who divorced me, nor was it a mutual separation, it was I who divorced him. Qi Yuanhuai's eyes turned bloodshot, and his body trembled. In this life, I am the victor. I followed the Imperial Guards to take a statement and learned that the Emperor had already suspected Qi Yuanhuai. Besides Luo Hua and Wei Yu, the Qi mansion had other spies. A general with 200,000 troops, how could the Emperor not be on guard? No wonder when I secretly entered the palace to expose Qi Yuanhuai's crimes to the Emperor, he showed no surprise, even appearing confident. In other words, if I hadn't exposed Qi Yuanhuai's crimes, I would have been implicated. The followers of Prince Yu were either beheaded or exiled, and Prince Yu was stripped of his title and reduced to a commoner, with no possibility of succession. The succession struggle involved too many officials, and the Emperor did not wish to increase the bloodshed. Except for the relatives of the guilty officials, everyone who had not directly participated was released. Luo Hua and Wei Yu were originally people arranged by the Emperor, so they couldn't stay in the palace as palace maids and were also released. Qi Jin should have been implicated. However, Qi Yuanhuai had rendered meritorious service to the state, so the Emperor distinguished between his merits and his crimes and granted him a wish before his death. Qi Yuanhuai's wish was to kill me. The Emperor refused and scolded him harshly. Qi Yuanhuai changed his wish to spare Qi Jin's life. The Emperor, pitying Qi Jin's youth, granted his request. Only Xiao Shuang, as a relative of a convicted official, remained in prison with Qi Yuanhuai, becoming a pair of star-crossed lovers. When I left the palace, the head eunuch Gao Gonggong came to see me off. Miss Qin is wise and brave, willing to sacrifice family for the greater good. The Emperor has said that the Qi family's mansion will be bestowed upon you. I hurriedly knelt down to express my gratitude. Gao Gonggong flicked his brush and whispered, "The Emperor knows about the young master of the Qi family poisoning Qi Yuanhuai. Though he is young, his nature is wicked. I urge Miss Qin to keep a close eye on him." I nodded in agreement. When I returned to the Qi mansion, everything had changed beyond recognition. Finally, in front of the entire household, I openly acknowledged Songlu as my adopted daughter. "From now on, you are my beloved daughter. Are you happy?" "Happy." She gave me a sweet smile. "Mother." The fallen flowers and light rain had nowhere to go, so I let them stay at the Qi mansion. As for Qi Jin, he has always been a headache for me. He often runs out to play with street thugs and only comes back when he needs money. Sometimes he even steals money from the house. I was wondering how to deal with him when Xiao Chui rushed over. "Miss, hurry to the lake." The young master pushed the miss into the lake. I wasn't far from the lake and arrived quickly. Seeing Song Luo soaking wet by the lake, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. As long as she's okay. Song Luo pointed at the lake. Gasping for breath. Mother. The young master pushed me into the lake. But luckily I can swim. I swam up. And he pushed me back down. So I just pulled him down with me. I followed her gaze and saw Qi-Jin struggling in the water. He can't swim. A servant who could swim had already taken off his shoes and shirt and was swimming toward Qi-Jin. But Qi-Jin was drifting further and further away, with only half his head above the water. If I gave the order, the servants would call him back, and he would be completely swallowed by the lake. I was torn between heaven and earth. Save him? Or not? I didn't know what to do. It felt like anything I did was wrong. The lake soon lost sight of Qi-Jin. After an unknown amount of time, Qi-Jin was dragged ashore, unconscious. Many people rushed to perform chest compressions and slap his face. But he showed no signs of life. His face was deathly pale, devoid of any vitality. I watched all this unfold in a numb daze, until someone approached me and said, "Miss, please compose yourself. The young master has passed away." I couldn't describe my emotions. I took a deep breath and knelt down on the ground, hugging my knees. Everyone, go away. I want to be alone. 2 lifetimes of grudges. Like a great dream. Those who betrayed me, those who hurt me, are all dead now. Only for this lifetime's Qi-Jin. My feelings are indescribable. I've piled all the hatred from the previous life onto him in this one. Is that right or wrong? Good people have this flaw, they're easily bound by chains. I hit myself. He's already dead. So I should just let it go. He was the one who harmed me first, he got what he deserved. I stood up and walked forward, preparing to call someone to collect the body. Suddenly, a cold male voice came from behind me. "Where are you going, mother?" My heart skipped a beat, and I turned around abruptly. Qi-Jin stood before me, unharmed, with a chilling smile on his lips. That tone, that expression, I'll never forget them for the rest of my life. I stumbled backward in fear. But he caught me. He called out again, "Mother." It's been a long time. It was Qi-Jin. The Qi-Jin from my previous life. The Qi-Jin of this life was dead. But the Qi-Jin from my previous life had been reborn. Although he was in the body of a 12-year-old. His demeanor was completely different. Every step he took toward me was filled with an intimidating aura. No matter how strong I become in this life. Whenever the image of being locked in a dungeon flashes through my mind, and the true culprit stands before me, I can't help but feel a chill run down my spine and my hair stand on end. He took me by surprise. Circling behind me, clamping his hands around mine, and wrapping his other arm around my neck from behind, tightening his grip with each passing moment. "You refused to let me study, deliberately ruined my life, and drove us to turn against each other. You must be proud of yourself. Huh? Do you think you won gloriously and beautifully? If it weren't for my rebirth, you wouldn't stand a chance against me. Poisonous woman." His grip tightened further, and just as I was about to suffocate, he suddenly let go of me. I turned around and saw Song Luo inserting the golden hairpin in her hand into Qi-Jin's shoulder. Qi-Jin turned around in disbelief, his eyes bloodshot, looking as if he wanted to devour someone. Luo Hua, Wei Yu, and Xiao Sui also ran over and helped restrain the injured Qi-Jin. Song Luo was so scared that she let go of her hand and asked me how I was. I asked, "Why were you two here too?" "You wanted to be alone. So we were worried and stayed nearby." My heart warmed. I took a deep breath, pulled out my hairpin, and said, "Song Lu, close your eyes. I'm going to kill someone." I walked toward Qi-Jin step by step. Even if you spend your entire life reading the classics, you'll still be ignorant of right and wrong, repaying kindness with hatred. In this lifetime, you don't deserve to read books. Allowing someone as unfilial and immoral as you to live as a worthless being is already the greatest mercy I can show you. You actually have the nerve to come back. No matter how many times I am reborn, I will kill you that many times. He was still a little afraid of me and whispered, "Qi Jin." With every word I spoke, I stabbed the hairpin into Qi Jin's body once, but avoided the vital areas. He eventually died from the pain. Luo Hua and Wei Yu watched my near-mad actions and couldn't help persuading me. "Sister, stop. He's already dead." "Fine." I was exhausted and panting. I threw away the blood-stained hairpin and collapsed on the ground. Luo Hua went to the government office to register Qi Jin's death, claiming he had drowned. I had the mansion renovated to erase all traces of the past. The gate plaque of the Qi mansion was removed. On an auspicious day, we hung the gate plaque of the Qin mansion with lanterns and drums. The Qin mansion has me. There was my beloved daughter, Song Lu. And there were my good sisters, Luo Hua Weiyu and Xiao Sui. We opened a cloth shop in the east of the city and an inn in the west. Xiao Sui was obsessed with being a businesswoman and ran the shop successfully. In our free time, we would drink under the moon, play the zither, dance, and search for plum blossoms in the snow. The entire mansion was filled with women, and even the air smelled fragrant.